Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have you guys in this chat today. Dr. Naomi Wolf, Brian O'Shea, her wonderful husband and wife, like amazing. I I happened to catch the first episode of your guys' new show together in the Lair, and I just absolutely loved it. It's fabulous. You guys together. Well, I mean, and here you are, Dr. Wolf, the leader of the fourth wave of feminism in the United States, right? And then Brian, you're like, if you don't mind my saying, like this big, strong alpha male,
Yeah, I'm leading the fifth wave of masculinity.
Exactly. But together, you guys are just phenomenal. The dynamics together, the respect and the deference that you give to one another, it just brings all of these conversations that we're having today into a very human and how do I say this? Just a very like balanced way, right? It shows a very different side of what we often see in these sort of echo chambers of just rah, 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 one side or the other. And I loved that. I love that about you guys together. And then of course, your first show, talk to me about this. Like, where did you guys get the idea to do this first show, or excuse me, to do the show? And then we'll talk about the first episode.
Can I jump in with, well, before I reply to that, I just want to acknowledge you, Breeauna, because I spotted you about 3 years ago in a Freedom Fest booth in South Dakota. And I thought, this young reporter is going places. She's so talented. And I had the honor of working with you. And I'm so excited and happy to see not only the work you're doing with the Beef Initiative, which you're so well suited to do, but also your new role at Zero Hedge, which is a platform we really respect, right? So well done. And how wonderful to be on your, I guess, co-hosted show. And so to answer your question from my perspective, I met Brian from kind of the opposite side of the ideological spectrum. I didn't meet him because, I was at a cocktail party with people I knew and agreed with, and there he was. I met him because I was getting death threats and I had to hire him as to provide security analysis and then to terrify my stalkers by his expertise in counter stalking. And we were very appropriate for 6 months. And then of course, we fell in love and dated and got married. And I guess to answer your question, we have a fascinating conversation all day long. And part of why it's fascinating is that we don't agree with each other a lot of the time, but we really respect each other. So I often think, when I think about my own podcast, I often think, well, what I have to say is interesting, but what Brian and I say, from the minute we get cups of coffee in the morning about current events, is so fascinating. I just want to turn on a microphone and capture it. And so I guess other people thought that too. And we just and then we found that when we just turn on the microphone when we're together and just riff the way we do, everyone likes it more than when we do our podcast.
Yeah, and it's not all geopolitics.
Right.
Like Naomi will be talking about, whatever geopolitics, and I'll say squirrel. And then we go back to the conversation, and we put some housekeeping in there and every other thing. So, and then of course we talk about our dog Loki.
There is Loki all day long. Yes, that's right. No, I don't know, honey. What would you say? Why did we turn on the mic, basically? And
well, we do have really good debates and conversations, we think.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was just kind of impulsive. Naomi said, "Why don't we just put on the cameras?" So I hurriedly put together some branding and backdrop, and we just started talking. And it's funny because with this conversation, it used to be Naomi interviewing me, or she's used to interviewing people. So she'll start talking, and then I'll say, Okay, my turn. Give me the mic in as respectful a way as I can.
Sure. And I think most of the world is probably familiar with Dr. Naomi Wolf being interviewed. Certainly her work on Bannon, right? I would say that you're probably one of the leading voices in the Maha movement. And
Thank you.
and you have been. Yes. I mean, you sacrificed everything coming out and certainly paid for it dearly during the pandemic. Which brings me to my point about, your first episode and giving credit where it's due, why credit is so important. And so I'm sure we'll be able to clip in, part of that first episode. But if you wanted to just give like a bit of a summary about what happened during that Senate hearing recently, that would be incredible.
Sure thing. And just to reprise what you said in the introduction, I realized the other reason I really wanted to turn on the mic for our conversations is that I think I've always believed in civil debate, between people who don't agree with each other. I've learned the most from talking to people with whom I think I disagree. And then it turns out that I might be wrong about some things, or they might be wrong, or, we have new insights. And I do think, one reason for people being really responsive to our show is that people really are hungry for those conversations across party lines or across ideological lines. So anyway, to answer your question, your audience may know, and if not, I'll just update quickly that I, at Steve Bannon's kind of initiative, spent the last 3 years of my life overseeing a very historic effort, which was 3,250 doctors and scientists who worked pro bono, the War Room Daily Clout research team, to read through the 450,000 pages of internal Pfizer documents that were released under a court order subsequent to a successful lawsuit by attorney Aaron Siri against the FDA. And the FDA wanted to keep these documents hidden for 75 years. So this was an unbelievably difficult and laborious undertaking. It resulted in 109 reports and 2 books, and we published each report on Daily Clout. And what happened, unfortunately, was at the end of 2024, Senator Ron Johnson contacted me, as he should, to say, like, there are going to be hearings after the inauguration. What of this mass of material is most important for us to focus on? And I said, there are 2, and I used to be a political consultant for Democrats, so I know exactly what's most explosive. Two of our stories. Number one is Ed Berkovich and Amy Kelly broke the story in 2023 because Berkovich, a lawyer, FOIA'd every mention of myocarditis from the CDC, receiving about 500 pages, which he and Amy Kelly, the project director, went through laboriously, page by page, email by email, put together a timeline and lifted out the story. Which was that at the highest levels in March to April of 2021, the CDC, Dr. Walensky, Dr. Fauci, Alex Azar of HHS, the White House template surfacing this to POTUS, the President of the United States, 15 White House staffers were being notified by the Israeli Ministry of Health and pediatricians organizations that they were seeing a signal of myocarditis in kids. And rather than, and literally the pediatricians were saying, what do we do? What do we tell our kids? Should we tell them not to exercise? They're being injured. It's very serious. And instead of these people coming clean and telling the parents of America, stop right away, don't inject your kids, they're sustaining heart damage, what you see in the emails is a cover-up. They freaked out, they went into crisis mode, and they created a completely redacted 17-page script that they used for that whole summer. If you recall, as a parent, Breeauna, no doubt you noticed influencers aimed at teenagers saying, get injected, influencers being paid to say, I got my teen injected, all that summer. And so it was the most shocking cover-up. Well, Senator Johnson used our material, Ed Berkovich's and Amy Kelly's material, for his hearing. It was the title of the hearing, cover up at the highest levels of myocarditis signals. But he didn't invite them to present it themselves, and he didn't credit their work. There was a passing verbal, thanks, Naomi and Amy, in a list of various other people doing random other things. That's not, as you know, as a very good journalist, that's not proper journalistic accreditation of the people who broke the story. And he, in fact, sent me a link when I was saying, aren't they going to be there? Aren't they presenting? He sent me a link to my own essay critical of Casey Means. And he said, I read this with great interest. And then it turns out that Calley Means was the person, her brother, seating people for the hearing. So I don't know how to read that, but it seems like my daring to be critical of the, both of these figures who are suddenly driving the Maha train, presenting plenty of evidence in my essay, may have been the reason that these incredibly hardworking, researchers, reporters were written out of history. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan MacDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you. But I did go into some detail in my latest essay about why credit matters. It's not about me. It's not about, narcissism. It's really about like 3 other major things, which I don't have to go into if you don't want me to, but one of them is just safety.
Right? Safety and protection.
Safety and protection. Like Brian spends maybe 3/4 of his time for free dealing with the death threats I get every month. And, he and other people with deep intelligence and, security backgrounds have warned me that the way to stay safest is to be loudest, right? And that's true for these researchers as well. I mean, they took tremendous risks, during taking on the Biden administration when the Biden administration was going after us, right? And they didn't have a war chest for lawfare. Many of them were living on their savings or on their retirement savings because they had been fired or had to leave their jobs because they opposed the mandates. Jayanthe Kunadasan, who to this day, who broke the story of the slow walking, the second story of the approval till after the election.
Right.
And Representative Jim Jordan is taking credit for it to this day without crediting her. She's in Australia where she was not only laid off from her job, again, living on savings when she took on the United States of America. And she was living in a country where people were being detained in quarantine camps. And then after she spoke up, she was threatened with being delicensed. So all of us face threats all the time. And Representative Jordan and Senator Johnson have security on Capitol Hill, and they have the media, and they have donors. And by appropriating the work of these volunteers, they are taking safety and resources away from the volunteers who deserve them and writing them out of history.
Yeah, and I want to say on the security part, attacks come in many forms. So like the Chinese, they make a differentiation between software of war and the hardware of war. The hardware is direct attacks, kinetic attacks. The software is the purpose. So if the purpose is to destroy any of these researchers, they might attack them with arrests. They might attack them with like Antifa type thugs, they might attack them with financial warfare, audit warfare, reputational warfare. So if the result is to silence them, then they're all in danger in some form of another. And like Naomi said, the louder their voice, the harder it is to do most of those other things. Because if a lot of people are going to miss them, you can't quite disappear them.
That's right.
So one of the main reasons I wanted to bring this up is because I think almost every American at some level understands what it is to work really hard and to have credit be taken, right? Or to not experience the proper source citation, especially in the journalistic world, right? Like we have many influencers on Twitter. We've got almost everybody has some sort of an X account today or a Facebook account. And I would imagine that most people understand what it feels like to have their work lifted and then be used by someone else without proper citation. And so one of the reasons why we're doing this co-branded sort of concept interview with Zero Hedge is because those of us in our farming and ranching community make up just 2%, less than 2% of the population today. And so I wanted to take this concept and explain how Congress has done the same to the American farmer and rancher.
Oh, no. Oh, tell us.
So
what happened?
So in 2015, 2016, Congress capitulated to the pressure of the World Trade Organization and multiple international governmental organizations, or IGOs, and removed something called mandatory country of origin labeling from our meat supply. So the American farmer today is living off of their savings, working 2 to 3 different jobs, while also trying to produce America's food supply. And the credit is being solely removed from the American farmer and rancher as cheap imports, subpar, not regulated or held to the same regulatory standards that we're held to here in the United States, are being
my gosh.
imported. That
is not okay. No one's ever explained that to me so well. Oh my goodness, that's very serious. So instead of being able to choose American beef at the supermarket, all I can do is choose beef, and it could be disgusting Chinese beef, made in substandard, subhuman conditions, full of bacteria, and I will have no way of knowing.
That's exactly right, Naomi. And often, so there are just 5 main processing plants in the United States that process about 95% of our domestic food supply, meat supply. Okay. On any given point in time, any given day, right? There's 5,400 head of cattle going through each one of these processing facilities, 5,400 per day. That's, or with hogs, it's about 1,200 hogs per hour.
Wow.
So when it comes to these conversations about EID, for example, it's just ridiculous, right?
What's EID?
So EID is electronic ID tag, and it's supposed to, it's a conversation for another time. Good. Just sticking to the idea of labeling, right? This idea that we can have 5,400 head of cattle going through, a single day and being processed, we end up with anywhere between 50 to 100 different cows in 1 pound of hamburger at the grocery store alone. Wow. And then the USDA stamps that as USDA approved, made in the USA, if it is any way materially altered in the United States. So if we have cows coming in from Mexico or from right, and they are processed here in the United States, it means that's the product of the United States, although it's undercutting the American farmer and rancher.
Totally.
Oh my gosh.
Or like you look at Smithfield pork, which is wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party.
That's exactly right. JBS is owned by Brazil. So 2 of these big 4 are owned not even by our own country.
Oh my gosh.
And they're augmenting them too.
What do you mean augmenting?
Well, so I did an interview with the Daily Caller, and we were talking about Smithfield. And what they've been doing at Smithfield is genetically altering some of the pork, so it has 3 times as much protein. But then those pigs are being shipped back to China, and those pallets are set aside for the People's Liberation Army only, and all the other, pork that they're producing either goes to the Lao Beijing, the common folk, or to us,
Oh my
basically.
God.
Well,
So Breeauna, sorry,
I was just
sorry
gonna
to,
say,
yeah.
government intervention is just silly to begin with. Just a very short example. California, for example, passed Proposition 12, which put restrictions on confinement for breeding pigs, essentially.
Okay.
We're breeding all of those pigs here in the Midwest, and we're charging a premium only for them to be processed and shipped back to California for quadruple the price. So it's just absolutely ridiculous when the government gets involved like that. But sorry, I apologize. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, is it fair to say that, like, by bringing in cheaper, maybe worse beef from Mexico and then treating it as American beef, it's kind of a version of bringing in cheaper labor without, unions or standards or whatever, and exploiting it?
I could certainly see how some would make that argument, but you know, I would attribute it more to intellectual property theft.
Oh,
would consider
interesting.
it I would
Right.
consider it to be plagiarism.
Right. Oh, I get it. They're selling it as if it's American beef, but it's not American beef, and all the resources that go into making American beef are being appropriated.
and
That's
they
exactly the same.
exactly.
That is IP theft.
Right. And just like your team spent the last 3 years laboriously going through these documents for them to be lifted and used in the Senate hearing, thankfully it's being exposed, sure. And thankfully people are still getting their beef. Great. The problem is that we have just plagiarized the work of thousands of American ranchers, and it's
Oh my gosh.
hollowing out our farming and ranching communities because we're not getting the credit, which actually translates to
To money.
monetary reimbursement, right?
And financial security, plus the ability to put those resources back
Right.
into the farms, right?
Exactly right. Yes. And that's why our cattle volumes are at a 70-year low right now. We are in very big trouble in this country if we ever plan to feed ourselves. So, and especially if we ever end up in a time of war, for example, if our supply lines get shut off, which they have been frequently lately, our global supply chain is quite volatile at the moment.
Wow.
Wow.
It is.
Embargo on Mexico because of New World screwworm, which if you happen to catch the article on that at Zero Hedge, the biological barrier was breached at the Darien Gap because we had so many people, millions of new hosts, that the mechanisms previously used to stop this parasitic fly from spreading past the Darien Gap were just obliterated. And wouldn't you know it, the New World screwworm has just come right up the same.
It's called the New World screwworm.
What does it do, Breeauna?
It is a flesh-eating parasitic worm,
Oh,
larva of a particular fly. So the fly gets in even the teeny tiniest little scrape or cut anywhere on your body, and it lays its little teeny tiny eggs, and then those. And they.
Sorry, it's we're in a highly insected area, and I'm just thinking, in this area they experiment on bugs and everything. And we once had a hornet that I killed in our screen porch. We're close to Connecticut and Massachusetts, so we're pretty far from South America.
You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path Collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path Collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/dailycloud and start your experience of transformation today.
And I used Picture this app to figure out the species because I'd never seen anything like this. And this thing came all the way from Peru and ended up in our screen porch.
Wow.
It's amazing how these eggs, right? These little buggers can just attach onto anything, clothing.
Wow.
Right. So,
Breeauna, sorry to jump in. You're confirming something. I interviewed Dr. Alejandro Diaz, who oversaw like massive immigration. He was treating people who were going along the migrant trail, and he predicted the pandemic 2 years before it happened, simply based on his explanation that they were bringing in so many new, as you say, parasites, viruses, bacteria, with no normal kind of evolutionary protection,
right.
that there was bound to be sickness, waves of sickness, and you're adding another dimension. That is truly gross. Does it have something specifically to do with meat? Are these parasites getting into the meat supply?
In cattle in Mexico. That's why we placed the embargo. Secretary Brooke Rollins placed the embargo on cattle imports, either from or through Mexico.
Ew. And now we can't tell if we're getting the flesh-eating parasite beef at the supermarket.
We've got it. No, we've got it stopped. There is an embargo, but this is my point about supply chain volatility. Our global supply chains are extremely volatile, and America's food security is a national security concern at this point.
Seriously.
We're in very big trouble.
Breeauna, what would the farmers want in terms of policies to protect them from all the horrible injustices you've just described?
Well, it's a great question. So it starts with regulatory reforms, and that's certainly been outlined in multiple Zero Hedge articles at this point. But more importantly, I wanted to dive in, if you would indulge me for just a moment. I wanted to dive in just very quickly about where you guys are seeing the state of food security and like I kind of wanted to go back to this idea of safety and security.
That's you, baby. Yeah.
Personal protection.
Yeah. That's definitely a Brian O'Shea question.
It's in trouble. And the reason I say that is because, what you guys just mentioned about this, taking the cows or the beef or the pork and over here processing it and then selling it back, it's more than just potential fraud and IP infringement. It's also, we don't know what they're putting into those animals. And right now, the big push from something called One Health, which is the global health ideology, and they're trying to force it into the new way of doing public health on a global scale, and they being the WHO and the One Health Commission and the 193 member countries of the WHO. What it does is it says, instead of treating the afflicted or a group of afflicted, isolating them, curing them, we're going to use One Health to tell you how to raise your cattle, how to manage your land, how to manage your water, how to manage your food, how to grow your food, how to manage and process your food. And the overarching theme of One Health is that the health of the planet, animals, and humans are all inextricably linked.
I think, didn't Casey Means say that in a hearing?
I was just gonna say, yes, she has said that now in several of her speeches, they come back down to this earth thing. And, her holistic approach to public health is, while seems nice and very, Smurf Village, it opens the door to that One Health ideology, because that is, that is that holistic approach. But really, if you look at One Health, it's the same thing that Mao was doing with the communes and the seizure of land. Because as we learned from the pandemic, if they come to Breeauna's ranch and they say, hey, you know what? We don't really like the way you're raising your cows. We're going to send in some of our specialists, which, by the way, the Surgeon General has an army of them in uniform. It's right on the website. It's like the health commission people, or I forgot what they call themselves.
And there's an interagency task force with APHIS, just to
and they're part of the One Health tripartite.
And APHIS is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service through the USDA.
Yes. So what this also does, it also allows them to really seize your food, cull your food.
Stop it. Loki's getting upset about the FedEx driver.
Let's just let him bark. We'll cut this part out. Hold on.
This can be a while. Maybe we should plow ahead.
Okay, we'll plow ahead. So anyways, the reason it's a danger to our food is because, as we've seen the Gates Foundation trying to replace baby's milk with some weird thing they were making. We've seen them trying to get rid of beef.
Yep.
And replace it with like this
lab-grown
food. And again, we don't even know. He doesn't like lab-grown food either. But there's also, dangers to our water supply, which then affects our fish supply. Our shores are almost completely fished by the Chinese fleets.
Wow.
They call it the Red Armada.
Oh my God.
And this massive, these fleets that come right in. I mean, they've fished out like most of Providence.
Along the coast of
Massachusetts. There's tons of them there.
Weren't fishermen saying that there are restrictions on fish that they can get that put in place by bought off commissioners?
Exactly. And so what the Chinese fleets do is they take this stuff all the way back to different Belt and Road countries, sometimes Thailand, sometimes Vietnam, and then they'll, for instance, with tuna, they'll inject it with very dangerous dyes to keep it pink
and sell it back to us.
Now, this is dangerous because if you look at real tuna, it doesn't look anything like what you're seeing on your sushi plate.
Right.
But the coloring of a fish, or any meat for that matter, allows you to know if it's gone bad.
Yes.
If this tuna has gone bad, you won't know. The difference between bad tuna and bad beef is beef, yes, that can sometimes kill you, but with sea life, it will always kill you or make you really, really sick.
Baby, can you also speak to the fact that all those food processing plants were blowing up during lockdowns?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe Breeauna has more insight into that. You remember the chicken plants, the beef plants? Do you guys
what
have
was
more
that
insight?
about?
It's a really great question. I have no idea, but we lost, I think, Destiny Revendez, I think, on X is her name. She did an incredible thread on this. She documented each and every one of those processing plants. And I think that there were over 200, at least, that she pulled together that were just that mysteriously either blew up or a plane crashed into them, or, just very odd circumstances. We've lost more. But certainly more have closed down just due to financial issues. But there were at least 200 that just mysteriously blew up or caught on fire, or
unbelievable.
Tons of them.
So you would say these are acts of war, right?
Absolutely acts of war. And I always tell people, I'm like, suspend what you see as an accepted reality of countries not taking out other countries anymore. We know that's not true. But if you think about the way, and I'll go back to the Chinese Communist Party on this and the People's Republic of China, they've said it. They said they want to be the global hegemon by 2049, the 100-year official anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party. And they have said that they're going to get there through several means, but most of those are based in the 1999 document, Unrestricted Warfare, released by the People's Liberation Army Press after they saw how good we were at kinetic war during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. So they liken it to a kaleidoscope. So you take all these different types of warfare: legal lawfare, hacking warfare, kinetic warfare, terrorism warfare, financial assistance warfare, you name it. They say mix it together and see what the kaleidoscope reveals.
Huh.
And what's especially scary about that, as a sidebar, Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, used that kaleidoscope analogy in one of his first speeches. I've never heard anyone else use it before.
Oh my God.
But the point is, so when you look at, I always tell people, I'm like, if you wanted to destroy or greatly sideline the United States of America by 2049, how would you do it? I think of siege warfare. If you kill all of our food, you poison all of our water, right. You drain us of all of our water, which is happening in California, by smuggling it out in frozen alfalfa. Right. You start putting, what happens in siege warfare? You run them out of food. You surround them.
You surround them and run them out of food.
And then you run them out of food and water. And if you look at like the Belt and Road, which is their toxic financing scheme, where they get countries to agree to let them rebuild their infrastructures, which die mysteriously when they switch to green energy. How about that? What happens is we are being encircled. If you just look at a map of the Belt and Road, 64, maybe 70 plus countries in the world all are part of the Belt and Road.
Wow.
Now, those countries, some of those countries have even let the Chinese set up ICBMs, or intercontinental ballistic missiles, on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Wow. So we're surrounded. Our food supply is being poisoned. You mentioned the Darien Gap. Well, guess what's happening south of Darien Gap? Belt and Road projects building a highway, a super highway, to go right over the Darien Gap, right to the United States.
Wow.
You take out our infrastructure. For instance, most of the commuter rails in this country are made by a company called CRRC, which is a wholly owned Chinese Communist Party company in Springfield, Mass. They make the T, they make the L, they make the BART, all sorts of them. So look at all the ways you would take out in a traditional game of siege warfare. Right. They're doing it.
Yeah. Right. And so it sounds like the food, I mean, when we go back to the attacks on farmers that Breeauna is describing, America has always been kind of unbeatable because we could feed ourselves.
That's right.
But if you disempower the farmers, they're going to stop farming, right? And then aren't we losing family farms?
At a rate of 77 per hour right now.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that's happened in Norway, in Sweden. These farms are going away. And what happens when you run out of naturally grown food? Well, you got to eat some of the, got to eat a Gates patty.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Oh my God.
And Naomi, I feel like you've been warning about this for a very long time, right? I read Letters to an American Patriot, for example. And I was wondering if maybe you could touch a little bit, if you felt comfortable touching a little bit on that.
Sure. I didn't realize what I was up against when I wrote The End of America, but I did write that in 2007 during the Bush II era. And then all my friends on the left celebrated when Obama was elected, thinking that fascism would go away. It was a warning that fascism could easily come to the United States. And I'm like, don't celebrate. This isn't a partisan thing. This is a tyranny thing. And then under Obama, some of the worst tyranny kind of unfolded. But it was basically, I looked at times and places in history in which democracies were crushed. And I saw that would-be tyrants, left or right, always take the same 10 steps. And I was seeing those kind of 10 steps put in place, but I didn't have the foresight or knowledge to add food security. And I should have. I talked about other things like, normalize torture and create a surveillance society and, criminalize speech, all of which we're seeing, but the food supply thing is absolutely
just for context, and I'll let you keep explaining. And letters. So you read Give Me Liberty as well then, right?
Don't put her on the spot. She might not. It's a sequel. we're being dive bombed by a hornet. Baby, we're still live. I'll make sure that.
Live, anyways, what I was going to say is
36.
when you mentioned, I'm sorry. When you mentioned fascism, I'm really thinking about what happened to the United States government and the intelligence community during and after World War II. Everyone is so busy looking for fascism. Not that it's not a noble cause, but it's a sexier thing to look for.
Right.
The dictator who, breaks the windows and drags people out of their homes. That's stuff, that is something people are interested in discovering. What nobody is paying attention to, and the reason why you may have overlooked food security, is the slow creep of communism.
Totally.
And as everyone's focused here, communism, like the Walking Dead in Game of Thrones, they're just moving forward. While everyone in that show, they were worried about this kingdom taking over, and the Lannisters were like fascists. Meanwhile, the White Walkers are growing in number and surrounding them. And so I'll end it by saying this, is as everyone's looking at this stuff and what happened in the US intelligence communities, we were so focused on fascism. We were so focused on the Nazis. We were letting communists in to the intelligence community, and it has taken over a lot of our institutions. Our kids were singing songs about the one world and no borders. John Lennon, Imagine, was considered the most beautiful song ever, and I used to like it until I looked up the lyrics. And it's like this slow boil that is slowly taking over. So when I think of this conversation with the food, people are so focused on the next shiny thing. They're like, oh my gosh, there was a terrorist attack, or a Tesla got blown up. And these are very critical, important things to pay attention to. But you always have to zoom out and say, okay, on this day, a Tesla blew up. This march happened. This bill was passed through this committee. China was doing this. Russia was doing this. Ukraine was doing this. The bio people were doing this. The WHO was trying to pass this. And you zoom out, and then you see them all working as part of that same kaleidoscope.
Yeah,
that's right. But also, I think, Breeauna, when it comes to food security, right? Like with all these other threats, kind of people know how to push back. But with food security, I don't think people know how to push back. Like how, from what you've told me, I'm horrified, but I'm thinking the place we used to buy chickens and pork straight from the yard where we could see the chickens and the pigs, that went under. Doesn't exist anymore. We tried to eat the cow slaughtered by our neighbor. It was disgusting. It wasn't high quality meat. No disrespect to her. It's a whole other story. But a lot of people are underwhelmed by that meat. We don't want to eat it again.
No.
We don't yet know how to fish our land, and well, you may, but I don't.
No, I do.
I like, how do I live supporting the farmers, right? Around here, there are farmers markets. They're like $8 beets. Like, you have to be a multimillionaire to buy your basic groceries at the farmers market. So what do we do, Breeauna? How do we, what I do want to know, what are the policies that the farmers want, and how do we support the farmers?
Yeah, those are definitely fantastic questions, and it's a multifaceted answer, right? So part of that includes reinstituting mandatory country of origin labeling, for example, just like we're doing right now.
Sorry to interrupt. Would that be a federal regulation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
FDA, is this Marty McCarty's thing, or would it be USDA?
Well, it would be Congress in the next farm bill, for example.
Okay.
And so it's very similar to the idea of properly labeling additives, for example. Right now we have just, natural flavoring, which can include a whole host of absolutely horrific things, right? So it's just a matter of proper transparency when it comes to issues like IMCOOL. The other number one issue that was identified in a piece that Zero Hedge did recently, for example, came from Cole Bolton, who is a banker and rancher in Texas, and Dustin Kittle, who is a rancher and agricultural attorney out of Tennessee. they're both identifying massive issues within the financial sector, and that agricultural debt is considered "quote unquote" bad hygiene right now. So we need to rein back in the Farm Credit Administration and realign it to its original mission.
Could you say that again? I was just coughing over you. I beg your, honey, please No, baby, we can't keep interrupting the stream.
Go ahead. This is the brand.
I don't know if the brand is one host gone. I think it's better to have all the hosts present. We'll cut this. Baby, please. Give us a minute, please, Breeauna.
Yeah, no problem.
Brian just took out a hornet because he has an anaphylactic shock reaction to hornet stings, and he did it with some sort of blowtorch that's making me cough. This is life in the country. So
just hairspray. It's the best way to take them out.
So let's go back. Do you mind, with you in the frame, can you go back to answer the most critical question you were answering, which was, what do we do to support the farmers?
Right. So yeah. Okay. So we'll go back to like naming Cole Bolton and Dustin Kittle.
Please.
So both Cole Bolton and Dustin Kittle have identified massive issues within the Farm Credit Administration, and they're both recommending a mission realignment. So I think it really comes down to using the Congressional Review Act to realign many of these federal agencies who have interpreted their authority way beyond the original mission of the agencies. So, for example, with Farm Credit, they hold 46% of America's agricultural debt, and
the government does? A government agency does? Oh my God.
And over 40% of their portfolio right now has been prioritized to loans of $25 million and above. And wouldn't you know it, in a 2023 ERS report from the USDA, in that very same year, where Verizon and these multinational corporations are receiving government subsidized multi-million-dollar loans from the agency that was created to help small farmers.
Wait, Verizon is getting them?
We had 500,000 small family farms who had applied for a loan of $400,000 or less, and were unable to get them because liquidity is dried up. So we need absolute regulatory reform and mission realignment of these agencies who have just gotten way out of hand, right? They've just far exceeded their original intent and purpose. And I think that's a lot of what DOGE has helped to identify, but now we need Congress to act on that.
Excuse me.
We really need Congress to instruct these agencies to get back to their original purpose. So, but I wanted to wrap this segment with, kind of talking a little bit about what you guys see and what you think, maybe what you guys are doing to help. So you mentioned living in the country and having land to fish. What are you guys focused on, if I might ask?
Gosh, I don't feel like we've mastered, the food supply question in the country at all. I mean,
well, we kind of have.
How so?
So what we've been doing, what I've been actively doing up here in this small town in northern New York. And by the way, for everyone listening, especially you ranchers and farmers out there, which I know that world and that place very well. That's where my daughter grew up, was out around Susanville and Independence and all those places on the eastern side of the Sierras. And she was in 4-H, I'm proud to say. But out here, what we've been really focused on is parallel economies and barter economies.
That's true.
So, for instance, we have arrangements with mechanics. We have arrangements with people that raise their own food, like eggs. I traded 3 dozen. I gave a box of 9mm ammo because I don't have a 9mm. To a lady who has a bunch of chickens, and she has a ton of eggs. So I got 3 dozen eggs when prices were like $15 a dozen.
That was a winning transaction,
and it was a $20, and she was happy with it. And so there's that. Having we do have like massive. We have a massive tank of gasoline that can pump. It's on wheels. we buy when the gas is low, and then always keep it full. And then we have a plan. We have we fire weapons. We're proficient in everything, and she's getting there.
Working on it.
She's working on it. And we can fish if we have to. We can hunt if we have to. That's stuff that I grew up in Maine doing, and I teach it slowly to Naomi. She's very interested in fishing. But really, what we find here is not the community of like kumbaya and let's all get along, but the community of people that can provide something to each other. So for instance, I provide, for the mechanic, for instance, background checks on new hires. He provides me a good discount on auto repair, the eggs and the chickens, the beef. And then just Naomi's done a great job in having people get together at, we have another house that we call Liberty Place. This is Liberty Lair. And she gets people together who teach different things. So she had a Maine congresswoman come in and teach about which herbs are right there on the land that they can use for different things.
Yeah, that was amazing. I have to say, when I was reflecting on this question, I did overlook the fact that I've become quite knowledgeable about herbal remedies, and we've stayed away from the worst dependency on doctors through things like I do harvest. Like, it sounds a little embarrassing because I'm talking to a real farmer who has
she's a rancher
who has a community of real ranchers, but I do harvest the dandelions every spring, and I've been reading up on herbal remedies, and I can treat a lot of things that are afflicting my family with herbal remedies, which I am proud of, and which is part of that self-reliant, self-sustaining thing. Although it's not a food supply thing, it's more of a health supply thing.
But that's important.
That's important too.
I think if I were to boil it down into a nutshell, the solution here is radical self-reliance, self-governance.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's everything that we're focused on at the Beef Initiative, is helping to funnel people and funnel liquidity back into ranchers, and helping everyone in the United States, the rest of the 98% who is not part of the farming or ranching community, to take back control of their food supply and to take back their own self-custody, buy a cow, own a cow, take part in the whole process.
Oh, is that so? You answered my last question, which is, how do I support the farmers next time I go to the supermarket? And you're saying buy a cow from a farmer and put it in the freezer.
Yes.
We've got to do that.
And we have the freezer space.
Is there like a hub or a website where you can find a cow?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked. So yes, we partnered with Carnivore Health, which is an absolutely incredible, talk about parallel economy. Carnivore Health is a health insurance company, but it's all crowdsourced. And they focused on very specific things like the carnivore diet, the carnivore crowd. So people who are, on the carnivore diet, this is what they want to help support, can become part of this crowd share, this health share, partnership. Anyways, so they helped us launch what's called Beef Maps. And if you go into Beef Maps,
beefmaps.com or .org.
You can all you have to do is plug in your local zip code, and
love it.
Your nearest rancher
will find our cow, baby. We're
Yeah.
gonna find our cow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. I'm going to promote
because
that.
we're normally just
Beefmaps.org.
asking random strangers who, you can tell by their dress if they raise cows or a farm,
Well, it's a little sketchy because you're like, these people, I'm not sure if they're even going to want me to come onto their land. And certainly with the biosecurity measures that many people are having to abide by right now because of APHIS regulations, you can't just drive onto a dairy, for example.
Oh, that's insane.
Oh no, it's awful. It is really awful. We're being very isolated with the Red Book policy.
It is psychological warfare against farmers.
It's actual warfare.
Actual warfare. You are being isolated.
Well,
You're being locked down from community support.
And I know we're trying to wrap this, but what they're doing, what I've noticed with the ranchers and the farmers, is they are waging multiple levels of warfare. And maybe we'll do another episode. We can talk about the right to repair movement.
Oh,
are you familiar with that, Breeauna?
Yes, and we can definitely talk about that moving forward. I think that is a big, I mean, look, it all comes down to private property rights. And I think what I love the most about you guys as a couple is that you really draw that last line of defense at your person. Your body is your last line of defense in your private property rights, or your first line of defense. It depends on how you look at it. But this is the fight for private property rights and the rights of the individual in the United States. And I think the more that we can explain that to people, and the more that we can take these very sort of nuanced concepts like mandatory country of origin labeling, for example, and then concretize that in the minds of the American population, where almost everybody has experienced in some way having, their work be taken credit for by someone else, right? Small or big, even if it's a brother that takes credit for a room that's been cleaned, right? We can all sort of identify with that idea. And then using that to explain what our farmers and ranchers are going through right now in an effort to gain public support and attention for the people who grow our food and who will secure our freedom and viability as human beings moving forward.
Absolutely. Well said, Breeauna.
And I would even say, in addition to that, people need to understand we are at war, and people are waging war upon the individual, up to the community, up to the state, up to the country. And when asked, well, how do you know? I say, well, think about anything you've given up or has been taken away from you that you didn't want to give up. It might not have been at the end of a rifle that you gave it up.
That's
right. It might have been at the end of a pen.
Right.
But if that has happened to you in rapid succession in the last 4 to 10 years, well, guess what? We're at war. And when people see it, they can't unsee it. And then all these things we're talking about, the individual, the ranchers, then they see why it's important that we protect the ranchers and the farmers and everything else.
Baby, you know what I want to do this afternoon? I feel so inspired by Breeauna.
What, darling? What is it? I'm so excited just by the way she presented that.
No, we've been putting off getting our fishing license. I want to go get our fishing license.
I have my fishing license. I've been slacking.
Well, I want to go fish. I want to face my fear of killing the fish. I'm scared to catch the fish, right? That's the Jewish lady in the apartment with the doorman part of my brain. It's I don't want to deal with this living fish at the end of a hook, but I have to get over that.
I mean, I would have trouble killing
the cowgirl.
I would have trouble killing a dog or a cat or a horse. When it comes to a fish,
you can do it. All right. Well, you'll have to teach me.
I can't really. I don't really find a social connection with fish. They're just
they flop around. But I'll get over it. I'll get over. Breeauna is raising food. I'm gonna contribute something to the dinner table.
You do contribute. You do.
No, but let me be inspired.
What you could do is reach out to all of the network members of the Beach Initiative and let them know that we will fly anywhere for a plane ticket, a hotel, and a T-bone steak to give them all the amplification of the message they need.
We can make that happen. We've got a few farms actually really close to you, and we can talk about that later. But
how awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Breeauna.
So grateful to have you on. Thank you for your collaboration and willingness to have this great conversation with me.
And thanks for all the work you do.
Thanks for all the work you do. It's so great and such an honor to talk to you. Breeauna, take care. Bye-bye.
You too.